I'm Joe Duffy of OffshoreInsiders.com, and along with Troy West of TroyWins.com, here we are with Sportsbook Reviews NBA Playoff Preview Show. And then there were four. We are down to the conference finals, and we are going to preview that in a moment, but make sure you definitely subscribe to Sportsbook Reviews YouTube page so you never, ever, ever miss a report. And Troy and I are going to preview the two remaining NBA playoff series, and we'll go straight to SBRodds.com. Make sure you click on the beta section. First of all, it's the Boston Celtics and the Cleveland Cavaliers. Cleveland is minus 340 to win the series. As you can see, they are 1.5 and 204, pretty much straight across the board, but make sure you go to SBR Odds so you can shop around for the best line there. Golden State versus Houston. Golden State minus 200 to win the series, though Houston a very modest 1.5 point favorite. Again, that's fairly much across the board, but the juice does vary, so you never want to get screwed by a line move again. So make sure you do shop at SBRodds.com to make sure not just getting the best point spread, but the best juice possible. Well, Troy, as I said, we're down the two series, Boston and Cleveland, two teams that each won as underdogs and in pretty impressive fashion, especially the Cleveland Cavaliers getting out the broom against the Toronto Raptors. And right before we recorded this, it did come across Dwayne Casey was fired. I saw at some sports books you could bet on whether or not he was going to be back next year. Truthfully, I probably would have bet that he was going to be back next year with Toronto, but thank goodness I didn't bet it. I only saw that moments before he was officially fired. But Dwayne Casey was fired thanks to LeBron James. And Golden State and Houston, we knew this was inevitably going to be the matchup in the Western Conference Finals, not just you and I, but of course pretty much the rest of the world. But what do you like in these two? Well, why don't we just start it out first of all with the Celtics and the Cavaliers in the East?
Yeah, Joe, this is a really interesting series, and I think I'd be foolish to give an official play on it. I think I'm going to kind of go to your theory where, making the game-by-game adjustments is where the value is going to be in this series. I think initially looking at it, I like the under because Brad Stevens has been so phenomenal in the way that he coordinates his defense. I truly, truly believe that he will have a game plan, and he's not going to let LeBron James put up 30, 40 points. He's going to make these role players of the Cleveland Cavaliers beat the Boston Celtics. And will he do it? Most likely, but will he do it scoring 30, 40 points a game, or is he really going to have to slow down the game, distribute the balls to guys like J.R. Smith and Kyle Korver and the George Hills of the world? Is he going to have to distribute the ball to these guys, and will they beat the Boston Celtics? Most likely, yes, but I think game by game, I'm going to start with the unders on these games. I just think Brad Stevens is too good of a coach, and I think he'll be ready with a defensive game plan to at least contain the Cleveland Cavaliers. Will Boston get enough offensively to beat the Cavs? Highly doubt it, especially in a 7-game series. But let's not count the Celtics out. This is a good Boston team that has really had players like Jason Tatum step up. Jaylen Brown's really stepped up, like you said in the last segment. Al Horford really emerged as, I don't want to call him a superstar, but a strong asset to this ball club. And boy, they are scrappy. They've got the home court advantage. We'll see how many games they can get in this series. I don't want to call for the long shot win because I don't know if that's going to happen. I'll start with the under, and I think game by games adjustments. Game one's going to be a strong tell. Will Boston be able to hang around, and will this be a low scoring affair in these games, or will the fast paced offenses take over? But I like the under in game one, and I'll be adjusting game to game in that series.
And, of course, we'll talk about the Western Conference Series in a moment. It's very interesting, how much should I really put into the splits? I've definitely documented that for the most part, splits are very overrated. And for a couple of you who are saying, what the heck is splits? It's talking about the home-road stats, and a lot of people look for home-road dichotomy. Boston has been pretty much unbeatable at home, but susceptible on the road so far, and maybe that does make some sense because, as we said, that really, one of the big stories has been the emergence of Jason Tatum. I think he's got 20 points or more in 6 straight games. And a lot of times you think that these young players are going to play a little bit better at home than they are on the road, although there's no question about the big home court advantage Cleveland does have. And maybe that's the number one reason that they are pretty prohibitive favorites. Well, I should say the number two reason. The number one reason is clearly they got this guy by the name of LeBron James. Not sure if too many of you people are familiar with him, but he's a pretty darn good player. And, I've said kind of as an aside, in all my years of watching sports, the greatest team sports athletes I've ever seen would be number 1, Wayne Gretzky. Number 2 was Michael Jordan. Number 4 was Tom Brady. And I think LeBron is just keep inching up there. And if he can somehow win 8 more games, he might be a contender for the number 1 or number 2 guy. This guy is beyond ridiculous. Look, I agree with you, Troy, and in fact, I don't think anyone's going to disagree with us that the strategy for Brad Stevens is going to be make everyone else beat you. But the strategy's one thing, the execution's another. Can they actually do that? Well, Boston's done a very good job of throwing different bodies at people. Ben Simmons was slowed down. Look, Ben Simmons is far from LeBron James, but he is one of the very few who I think legitimately could be the next LeBron James, the next Magic Johnson, and he did quite well against Miami, but Brad Stevens came up with a way to slow him down, to say the least. So it's possible. I mean, it's possible if anyone can somewhat neutralize LeBron James, it is Brad Stevens, and really that's all you have to do is somewhat neutralize him, because it's not like he's got a phenomenal supporting cast. I did say that I think he's got a better supporting cast than people give the rest of the Cleveland team credit for, but still, all in all, it is LeBron James or bust, and I do agree with what you implied, Troy. It is a matter, Al Horford, I was critical of him. I said on a couple of our shows, I had my doubts whether Al Horford, he's usually a guy who's been better during the regular season than in the postseason. When things get physical, he kind of disappears. But Horford has really stepped it up. Again, is that a credit to Brad Stevens? He's the one coach who's been able to get Al Horford to really play well in the postseason. Jaylen Brown, with a couple days rest, maybe he's fully recovered from his injury. He's been tremendous. So maybe both of these teams, especially Boston, we focus so much on their 2 big injuries that they had, and maybe not the fact that this is a fairly talented team. It's one of those, as you said, Troy, I don't really like to make series bets or any futures bets for that matter, because I like to make those game-by-game adjustments. But, Boston, I think, is a pretty live dog, and there's no bigger fan of LeBron James than me, because, remember, my Adrian Barbeau theory is, I don't really focus on the number 4, the 5, the 6 guy. I focus at the top of the roster, and there's nobody better than LeBron still. I think all in all, Boston here is a pretty good home underdog. And as I said, I do kind of agree with what you said about Cleveland maybe being a good underplay, because Cleveland's regular season statistics, I think, were a little bit deceiving. The intensity goes up in the postseason. In the first series, that turned out to be true, obviously, against Toronto. Made it pretty wide open. We did see some higher scoring games, but I would also agree with you, maybe lean a little bit towards the under. And the big series, the one that everybody was waiting for, it has happened. Of course, Golden State and Houston. I truly believe that the Warriors are as talented of a roster that's ever been put together. Houston, of course, does have the home court advantage. That's big. Can Houston pull off the upset? And the odds makers, Troy, are saying it really wouldn't be that big of an upset. Can they pull it off?
Yeah, no, and I agree, and I thought that was interesting, Joe, when the lines did come out. I wanted to say I picked Golden State at the start of the year, been kind of riding them throughout the year, and even the start of the playoffs, I liked Golden State. And I don't necessarily want to backpedal at all, but I truly do believe, and it's funny to say this, but Steve Kerr said it himself yesterday, never underestimate a team that's hungry, and Houston is hungry as hell to get this series. You got guys like Chris Paul who are just dying to get that championship ring. You got guys like James Harden, who's been around for a while, that's dying to get that ring. Golden State's been there, done that, and I'm not saying they're not going to be as hungry. Everybody's hungry for a championship, but never underestimate a team like the Houston Rockets that are extremely hungry, and they've got a lot of veteran talent on this team. They're gelling at the right time. What they did against Utah was extremely impressive, and boy, the way Chris Paul's playing his last game, putting up 40-plus points, Steph Curry's going to have his work cut out for him defensively on Chris Paul. I think this is going to be an extremely interesting series. Would not be shocked if Houston won this series in 6 or 7 games. And like you said, they're not a substantial underdog. I thought they may come out at plus 200 or even plus 300. I thought Golden State would be around -3, -350, and they're not. So Vegas is telling you that, hey, there's a legitimate shot that Houston's got a chance here. And I'm going to go back to what I said about that Boston-Cleveland series. I think the game-by-game adjustments Joe, are going to be critical here. It's obviously going to be very high scoring, but will it match that total? I think that remains to be unseen. Both these teams got a ton of scores on the floor, but I think this game one Monday night is going to be a huge tell point. I mean, if Houston comes out and guys like Klay Thompson, who plays phenomenal defense, if he locks down James Harden and really kind of takes him out of his game, this could be a long series for Houston. But if guys like Chris Paul and Clint Capella continue to step up, if Trevor Ariza and PJ Tucker step up defensively on Kevin Durant, they're two of the few guys that match up to him size-wise. If they're able to at least contain him, it will be an interesting series, and I think Houston could get it. But I think you're going to know right away in those first two games in Houston whether this is going to be a long series or if Golden State will take it in 5 or 6. So I think game-by-game adjustments are critical here, and that's the route I'm going to go. Game one's a pass for me, Joe, just because I want to see how this series flows. But game 2, 3, and so forth, I think I'll have a better idea of where this series is going to go.
That's tough to debate, Troy. If somehow, Houston loses the first two games at home, we can pretty much write this series off. And, obviously you can say that about just about any series in any single sport, but especially when your opponent is the Golden State Warriors. What'll be interesting here is, as you said, Clint Capella in my Adrian Barbeau theory. And by the way, I don't know if I defined it on this show, but my Adrian Barbeau theory is, and I think I did, but it's you really got to look at the top of the roster, top heavy. Clint Capella has truly evolved as a number 3 option, more so on the defensive end of the court. But, is this a case where Capella truly is the new star in Houston? That's the answer's got to be yes, I think, for Houston to pull off the upset here. Mike D'Antoni did have success when teams kind of like to clog up the middle to defend the pick and roll. He does like to go 5 wide and then get his guards on isolation. The big problem is with Golden State, with Iguodala and Durant and Thompson, they've got athletes that can really slow down Harden and Paul if they do go in isolation. So I don't know. I think really in the chess game, what will D'Antoni do if, Golden State decides to put Green or, a big man in the middle to really try to stop that pick and roll? How will D'Antoni adjust? Does he have something up his sleeve? All in all, there's no question that, the proverbial in any other year, Houston would be a very legitimate team to win the NBA championship. The problem is I do think the Golden State Warriors are really approaching the status of the Chicago Bulls of the Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen era. This team is just so ridiculously talented. Again, it's going to be a prediction rather than a bet. I've explained numerous times I don't really like to make the futures bets, and I usually don't like to lay a big number on the money line, but if you can get Golden State at minus 200, I do think that it will be, a pretty good bet here. Yeah, Troy, as you know, people can bet, on a certain team to win it in a certain number of games, and we kind of agreed about the adjustments here. I do think, if anything, maybe I would look at Golden State as a great prop bet, winning it in like maybe 5 games or either one of the 2 series. Do you think there's maybe, without even having the odds in front of you, do you think it's possible that, there could be a sweep or even one of those really prop bets that would jump out? And again, even without looking at some of the lines, what would you lean towards, say, maybe, betting LeBron James under the total with the points scored because you think that, maybe Cleveland would make some adjustments and they're going to try to get guys like Kevin Love involved a little bit more in the offense. But, again, more of I know it's off the top of your head and you haven't really analyzed all the prop lines, but I would have to say I think Golden State making it a short series, even Golden State sweeping, I would have to take a long, hard look at that. Is there anything that for the prop bettors out there that you at least have a lean towards?
I do think my lean would be, and a lot of people would argue this, and I looked foolish last series coming out and saying Toronto would make that a series and potentially win it. But I do think Brad Stevens is the best coach in the NBA right now, maybe a close second to Greg Popovich. But what he's done in these playoffs has been truly remarkable. And the way this team plays defense, they've been playing defense like this all year long. And I truly, truly believe that Brad Stevens is not going to let LeBron James be the X factor in this series. So I think team totals for Cleveland, obviously, and team totals for LeBron, I think he's going to have to distribute the ball to guys like you said, Kevin Love, Kyle Korver, etc. So I like team totals to go under. As far as that Houston series, boy, that's tough. I like I said, if Golden State comes out with an incredible defensive game plan, we've seen James Harden in the past I'm going to use the word. He has choked in the playoffs. Chris Paul has choked in the playoffs. Both these guys right now are not known to be clutch players in the playoffs. Neither of these guys have been in this position. So would I be shocked if Chris Paul and James Harden lay an egg in game 1 and game 2 and they potentially get swept? No. I do think it's more likely that this series does go 6 or 7 and Houston puts up a dogfight. I think this team's that good. They only have 17 losses on the entire year. This is a really, really good basketball team, and what they did against Utah thoroughly impressed me. I know Utah was young, but when you go into Salt Lake City in the playoffs and beat them by 15 plus points twice, this is a good team. So I think this series goes deep.
Yeah, and Kyle Korver might even make a very interesting prop bet because, look, he's just a flat-out shooter. Still in his old age, he's pretty good at creating his own shots, but his job is to make teams pay. If they're going to throw a bunch of bodies at LeBron James, as we do expect that they will, that maybe Kyle Korver will get a few more open looks, and you can kind of see how Tyronn Lue might say, hey, let's run some plays for Kyle Korver if they are double-teaming. So I don't know, maybe I would even take a look at Kyle Korver over the total, where, of course, you can bet on the number of points scored. And look, go to SBRodds.com, and if you agree with Troy that this Cleveland could be a lot of unders, you can bet these adjusted lines. You can bet it going under by 4 points, etc., and get much better juice. So there are so many options out there. And like I said, I spend so much time making these sides and totals picks. I don't really usually do a lot of the prop bets, but once we do get this deep in the playoffs, sometimes I do. And at offshoreinsiders.com, if I've got one that I truly like, I will definitely release it there. Well, Troy, why don't you tell everybody what they can get at TroyWins.com?
Yeah, thanks, Joe. We actually just finished up the NHL playoffs and our series bets going 4-0. We actually had the Winnipeg Jets at plus 125. Yesterday finished the deal in Game 7. Had to sweat that series out, but we did get it. Got another big series bet that we're releasing tonight, so come take a look. The Tampa Bay-Washington series. Right now we're on a 17-8 run in MLB, and we're going to be releasing a couple of plays here if these game won. So come take a look. That's TroyWins.com. We're happy to give you a free trial.
Troy, that would be very interesting. I would definitely go to Troy Wins and see what he says about that series. On one hand, did Washington finally get that big confidence-building victory over Pittsburgh? Or conversely, to use one of Troy's terms, did they blow their load, and will they maybe have a little bit of a letdown here? Troy will definitely let you know at Troy Wins. And at offshoreinsiders.com, finally, broke out of what was only my second slump since August 27th in my 30 years, and in fact, very close. June 1st will be my 30th anniversary as a full-time professional handicapper. 30 years in the business. My winning streaks have always outnumbered and outlasted the losing streaks. And since August the 27th, the gap has even widened because, a lot of different reasons. But make sure you visit me at offshoreinsiders.com. And certainly subscribe to Sportsbook Review's YouTube page. And Troy and I will be back on, let's look at the schedule because the game one is Monday for one of the series. So we'll take a look at the schedule and see exactly when Troy and I will be back. Of course, during the regular season, we generally did it Monday through Friday, but we're working, with the dynamics of the NBA schedules. But we'll certainly be back early next week to take a look at, the games 2s and 3s, etc., and do an update on, and maybe even some updated odds as far as the series are concerned, etc. So make sure you subscribe, and we will talk to you early next week.
Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to our channel. Now, we've put a lot of work into producing all these free videos, so please help us out and keep all our content free for you forever by simply liking, sharing, commenting, and subscribing. Now, not to mention, a visit to our industry-leading website will warm the hearts of all our SBR employees, especially myself. Now, the links are over there to the left, so do check those out. Thanks for watching.